Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Okay, so what did we see in the previous class? We started with chapter number 5. So what did we see in the chapter?
Up to 3 and 4. 3 is regarding Arjuna has 2 doubts, no? So 3 and 4, he told in one chapter he told to fight. Sorry, in one chapter he told like leave everything and go for meditation. That is good. And in one thing, one chapter, fight is good. Action is good, but the action is should be in the God conscious.
Yes, he didn't tell him to leave everything and go. He asked him to cultivate knowledge. He glorified transcendental knowledge. And Arjuna is thinking that to cultivate knowledge, I will have to leave and go. But Krishna didn't tell him to leave and go, right? He told him to, he was glorifying transcendental knowledge. So Arjuna thought that, okay, he's glorifying knowledge so much and I have to cultivate knowledge. But he is thinking that to cultivate knowledge, I have to go to the forest. That is Arjuna's misconception. Yes.
And at the end of the 4th chapter, he again got that doubt. Both God is telling us which we have to accept, whether to cultivate knowledge or whether to fight.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. And actually Arjuna, he know, but because for us to clear our doubt, Arjuna asked Krishna.
Yes. Yes. Thankfully he thought about us.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. What else did we see?
So how to perform Nishkam Yoga?
Yes. Here, basically, Krishna is telling him that he has to perform Nishkama Karma Yoga. Nishkama means do the work, Kama, your duties, but without being Nishkama, without being attached to the fruits of the results. Yoga, you give the fruits to the Lord. So that is Nishkama Karma Yoga. By doing Nishkama Karma Yoga, he will not be entangled in the cycle of birth and death because there is no reaction to such actions. Okay. So what is the problem if somebody takes premature renunciation? Why Krishna does not recommend?
Again, they will fall back.
Yes, there is a possibility that he will fall down again because the mind has not yet been purified. His mind is still dwelling on how he can gratify his senses and all that. So because the purification has not yet happened and he has renounced everything, then there is possibility that he will fall down. Now somebody was asking this question that, okay, even when we are chanting Hare Krishna, even then some thoughts are coming to our mind. So then how to answer this question?
I think chant and chant slowly, it takes off our thinking.
Yes, as we are chanting, the process itself is purifying us. But when somebody is doing practicing Jnana Yoga, the process is not purifying us. In Jnana Yoga process, one should already be purified before practicing it. Okay, so purification should already have taken place. But in Bhakti Yoga, as we are practicing Bhakti Yoga, the process itself is purifying. That is the difference between the two. In Bhakti Yoga, we don't have to be completely pure and then we start practicing. No, we can practice anytime, any place, and anybody can engage in it. And as we do it, purification will take place automatically. But if somebody is has gone to the forest to cultivate knowledge, that will not, he should have already purified his mind before going there. So that is the difference between these two processes. Okay. All right. So then we saw this concept of Vishuddhatma, Vijitatma, and Jitendriya. And we saw how somebody who's practicing Nishkama Karma Yoga is untouched. Even though he may be physically present in the material world, still he is untouched by the contaminations. So the example that Krishna gives is the lotus leaf. Yes, lotus leaf. Okay, and very important lesson, rise from touch me not to touched me not. So we should not be like the touch me not plant, which reacts to even the smallest of touch. The moment you touch it, immediately the leaves are reacting. So we should not react to to our external situation. We should be like the leaf, where no matter what happens, even though we are in the material world, we don't get affected by the contaminations around us. Okay, so we will begin with 13. Please repeat. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Okay.
Sarva karmani manasa sanyasyaste sukham vashi navadvare pure dehi naiva kurvanna karayan.
Okay, we need volunteers to read. Who can read?
Yes, I will do, Mataji.
Okay, Manasa, you would like to read what? The translation or the other text?
Yeah, okay, translation.
All right, thank you. And the other text? Anybody would like to volunteer?
I'll read the other text.
Okay, thank you, Krishna Kumar. Let's read the translation, Manasa.
Yes. When the embodied living being controls his nature and mentally renounces all actions, he resides happily in the city of 9 gates, the material body, neither working nor causing work to be done.
So Navadvare Pure, city of 9 gates. This we have already discussed, right? The body is the city of 9 gates. There are 9 openings. So what are the 9 openings of the body?
2 ears,
Yes.
2 eyes,
Yes.
nose,
Yes.
genitals,
Yes. One more.
Mouth.
Mouth.
Mouth,
Yes.
yes,
Mouth.
yes, sorry,
Correct.
mouth.
9. So these are the 9 openings. And just like how a city may be protected by a fort, and the fort may have many entrance and exit points, right, to go inside the city and come out of the city, or even the city itself, even if it's not protected, but there may be many ways by which one can enter the city and come out of the city. In the same way, these 9 openings allow the soul, I mean, whatever goes inside and what comes outside is through these 9 openings of our body. For example, when we see something, certain impressions are created in our mind, right? So this is gone inside our system. And then because of that, we may perform some activities. So that is the output. So the soul's connection with the outside world is through these 9 gates, through these 9 openings. So we have to be very careful what we put in and what comes out. Just as how a very well protected city will have its security, and unwanted elements will not be allowed to enter the city for security reasons. And the same way, people will not be allowed to exit if, let's say, somebody is a criminal. So he will not be allowed to enter the city. So for the sake of security reasons, it's not that anybody can enter and anybody can leave at whatever point of time they want, right? There are some restrictions. In the same way, we have to be careful what goes into our system and what kind of activities are going to come out. What are we going to do? If there is no rule and regulation, then there is going to be chaos. Okay, so what is Krishna saying here? When the embodied living being controls his nature and mentally renounces all actions. So here Krishna, yes, he's talking about renouncing action. But see, he's saying mentally renounces all actions. He's saying manasa sanyasyate. So mind, manasa, mentally we have to renounce. We don't have to physically renounce actions. So there is a difference. When we are mentally renounced means what? Although on the bodily platform, we are performing some actions, because we are detached to the fruits of the actions. Therefore, we are mentally renouncing the actions. So Krishna is saying that you have to mentally renounce all actions. Not on the bodily level, not on the physical level. Physically level, yes, we can engage in our duties. Just as how, let's say one is not able to perform a certain kind of worship for the deity, yes, but he has the desire. Let's say somebody has a deity and he has the desire in his heart to decorate the deity with nice, precious jewels. Yes, but because of his financial status, he is not able to purchase those precious jewels and actually put those around the deity. So what the deity allows, what the Lord allows, what Shastra says is that we can do manasa puja. We can worship, do the worship in our mind. Mentally we can do it, right? In our mind we go, we purchase this beautiful jewelry and then we adorn the deity with this beautiful jewel and all that stuff. And even when we do manasa puja, mentally we do the worship, even that is accepted by the Lord, that we have actually done the worship. We get the benefit of doing the worship. So this is how we can do manasa puja. Here Krishna is talking about manasa sanyasyate, to mentally renounce the actions. There is a very nice story about a Brahmin. He was very poor, but he had the desire to worship the deity. And he wanted to prepare a huge platter of foodstuffs to offer to the Lord. But he was very poor and he did not have the resources to be able to do that financially. So what he did was, in his mind, he has prepared all these preparations and everything, and he has put them out on a nice table to serve the Lord. And just before offering it to the Lord, he's checking the temperature of the food. You know, we don't offer steaming hot food to the deities. Just as how we cannot eat. If we eat steaming hot, our mouth will get burnt, right? So we offer the food to the Lord, which is a temperature which one can eat. So he put his finger in one of the preparations to check if it was just the right temperature to offer it to the deity. And remember, he's doing all this mentally. He has not really prepared it, right? It's all on the mental level. So in his mind, he has put the finger, but then he saw that his finger was actually burnt, really burnt. In reality, his finger was burnt. So which means the Lord has accepted, immediately he has accepted that service. So even Manasa Puja, the Lord accepts. So merciful he is. Okay. Let's read this.
Okay. Activities of the body and the city of 9 gates. The activities of the body or figurative city of body are conducted automatically by its particular modes of nature. The soul, although subjecting himself to the conditions of the body, can be beyond those conditions, if he so desires. Owing only to the forgetfulness of his superior nature, he identifies with the material body and therefore suffers. By Krishna consciousness, he can revive his real position and thus come out of his embodiment. Therefore, when one takes to Krishna consciousness, one becomes completely aloof from bodily activities. In such a controlled life, in which his deliberations are changed, he lives happily within the city of 9 gates. Purport 5.1.
So see, Prabhupada is explaining how the soul, although subjecting himself to the conditions of the body, can go beyond those conditions if he so desires. So although we are all the spirit soul, but we have a certain type of body and we are conditioned to behave according to the kind of body we have. For example, when the soul is in the body of the dog has to bark, right? The dog cannot, the soul is in the body of the dog. So it is conditioned by the kind of body, by the dog body it has. So the same way, all of us have a certain kind of body according to our past karma. So some of us have the body of a man, some of us have the body of a woman, some of us have the body of an Indian, some may have the body of a non-Indian. So according to the kind of body we have, we are conditioned. But that doesn't mean that we cannot go beyond these conditions. We can go beyond these conditions if we so desire. So as we discussed last time, we can be put in a certain situation, but how we act in the situation, that decision, right? That independence, that minute independence of what we are going to do in that condition, that is what we have with us. That we can, that decision we take, how we are going to behave. So it may be that in my previous life, I was very, very sinful. So because of that, now I am born in an American family where eating and eating beef is considered very normal. Yes, but that doesn't mean, so the situation is created by material nature because of my past activity. I have got that kind of a situation, but still in that situation, that person can choose not to eat meat. He can choose to become a devotee. He can choose to read the Bhagavad Gita and follow the principles of the Gita. So that choice is made by the living entity. So therefore, when one takes to Krishna consciousness, one at once becomes completely aloof from bodily activities. In such a control life, he lives happily within the city of 9 gates. So like this, in this condition, the soul can be happy. So the soul has a choice. Let's read this.
The soul has a choice. Although subjecting oneself to the conditions of the body, one can be beyond those conditions if he so desires.
Okay, so first lesson from this purport, the soul has a choice. We do have a choice. We have minute independence. And nobody interferes with that minute independence. Even Krishna does not interfere with that minute independence.
Cause of soul suffering: forgetfulness of his superior nature and identifying with the material nature.
The reason why the soul is suffering is because we have forgotten our superior nature. What is our superior nature? That we are the children of God, right? So because we are his children, we are of a superior nature. The soul belongs to his superior energy. But what has happened now, because of our forgetfulness, because of our ignorance, we are identifying with the material nature. We are thinking that I am this body. I am what I see in the mirror. For example, if there is this child who has forgotten that his father is the city's richest man, he has forgotten that he has left home and he is loitering around the streets and he does not have anything to eat. His clothes are all torn, right? He has forgotten that his father is the richest man in the city. But when he remembers that his father is such a person and he goes back to his father, then he will be happy. In the same way, we also, when we revive our Krishna consciousness, revive means what? It is already there in us. It's not something that we are going to do brand new. It's already there. Krishna consciousness is already there within each one of us. It's not an artificial imposition on the mind, right? So when we revive our lost relationship with Krishna, then only we can be happy. Yeah.
Solution to the soul's suffering. Solution to the soul's suffering. By Krishna consciousness, one revives his real position and comes out of the embodiment, because by Krishna consciousness, I think. one becomes completely aloof from bodily activities. In such a controlled life, one's deliberations are changed and he lives happily within the city of nine.
Yes. So we have a choice. The reason why we are suffering is because we have forgotten our relationship with Krishna. And what is the solution? We have to revive our real position. And that way we can come out of this embodiment. As long as we are embodied, as long as we have this body, then we are going to be still trapped here. But when we revive our relationship with Krishna, then it's like that child who has forgotten his rich father, he going back home. So we have to sit in the city of nine gates, but we don't have to be stuck in it. We don't have to be stuck in it. We can come out of it. So happiness is going home. 5.14.
न कर्तृत्वं न कर्माणि लोकस्य सृजति प्रभुः न कर्मफलसंयोगं स्वभावस्तु प्रवर्तते.
The embodied spirit, master of the city of his body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of the material nature.
Okay, so now again we are going to talk about the three doers. Remember in chapter 3 we spoke about the three doers, the living entity, material nature,
Desires.
and the
Yeah.
super soul. Yes. So here Krishna is saying that the living entity, the embodied spirit, he is not the doer. He does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of his actions. See, in this shloka, the word na has come thrice. So Krishna is saying here that you, the spirit soul, you are not creating activities. You are not inducing people. You cannot force. It's not in your control to induce people to act, nor is the fruit of the action in the control of the living entity. So all this is enacted. So if the living entity is not the doer, then what Krishna is saying, all this is enacted by the modes of material nature. So a person is creating an action. The mode of material nature is creating the activity by putting the soul in a certain situation. So what Krishna is saying here exactly is, Arjuna, yes, you are the spirit soul, but now you are in the body of a Kshatriya. And therefore, Kshatriyas are in which mode? Ignorance, goodness, passion.
Passion.
Passion, yes. Kshatriyas are in the mode of passion. So because this spirit soul is now in the body of a Kshatriya, he has to act like a Kshatriya. So he's saying that actually this is enacted by the modes of material nature. He is affected by the mode of passion. The mode of passion is more prominent in Kshatriyas. So he's saying that you are not the controller. You have to fight the war. Okay. Okay, see here, Krishna uses the word Prabhu in the second line, last word. So the spirit is Prabhu. Prabhu means master. So he's the master of the city of his body. Externally, he thinks that he is a master of the city of the body, but then Prabhupada explains that how the living entity is no kind of master. There is nothing that he can control. So living entity is not the so-called master. He, under ignorance or under the influence of Maya, he thinks that he is the master. As long as he's in the city of the body, he appears to be the master of it, but he is neither the proprietor nor the controller of the actions and reactions of the body. So are we missing something here?
Yeah, who's responsible for the actions of a realized soul?
I'm sorry, your voice is breaking, Krishna.
Then who is responsible for the actions of the
Yes,
realized soul?
correct. Then who is responsible? If the living entity is not the proprietor, he is not the controller of the actions, then who is responsible for the actions, right? And if the living entity is not the proprietor, then who is the proprietor? Who owns everything and everyone?
Krishna.
Krishna, yes. So now let's see the thread of thought in the next verse. Okay, Prabhupada explains more things in the purport. Let's see.
As long as he is in the city of the body, he appears to be the master of it. But actually, he is neither its proprietor nor controller of its action and reaction. He is simply in the midst of the material ocean, struggling for existence. The waves of the ocean are tossing him, and he has no control over them. His best solution is to get out of the water by transcendental Krishna consciousness. That alone will save him from all turmoil. Purport of 5.1.
So
Analogy
see the
given.
analogy. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah, read.
Okay. Analogy is waves of material ocean are simply tossing one in the struggle for existence. Waves is equal to modes of material nature. And the solution is seek out help. Grab onto the floater thrown by the rescuer. Surrender to a spiritual master.
So just as how this person is in the ocean and he's being tossed and turned in the ocean and he's completely helpless, in the same way, in the material world, we are under the influence of the three modes of material nature, and we are being put in situations by these three modes. Now we have to remember that who chose that one person will be in the mode of passion, somebody else would be in the mode of ignorance, somebody else may be in the mode of goodness. Who has made this choice?
God.
So
No.
Krishna,
So according to our wish, no. According to our wish and our behavior, God give that body.
exactly.
karma.
Yes. So if somebody is being afflicted more by the mode of ignorance and less by the mode of goodness, then it's because of his own activities. So first we chose them, then they choose us. We have chosen the modes, then the modes put us in a certain situation. So that we have to remember. Okay, so it's not that there is injustice. It's not fair. It's not my fault that I am in the mode of passion. I have this kind of body, so I have to act in the mode of passion. But before that, we chose them. We chose to be in the mode of passion. That's why we have that kind of body. That's why we are in that kind of. So, okay, anyway, now that we are there in the middle of the ocean, how do we come out of it? So we have to seek out for help. When we seek out help, somebody will throw floater, and we grab onto the floater, and then we reach the shore. That person is our spiritual master. And what is a floater? He is throwing the floater of Krishna consciousness, or we get onto the boat of Krishna consciousness, and then we will reach the shore. That is the solution. So now one may ask some questions. Let's read.
If the soul is not the doer, whose reactions is he getting? Whom are the scriptures meant for? If a tree is cut, axe is the instrumental cause and woodcutter is the initiating cause. For actions in this world, Prakriti is the instrumental cause, Jiva is the initiating cause.
So in this verse, we saw Krishna has said that the living entity is not the doer and everything is carried out by the material nature. So now if the jiva is not the one who's doing things, then why is he getting the reactions? Why does he have to suffer the karma if he is not the one who's doing the thing? And for whom are all these shastras meant? If we are not the ones who are doing anything, then why do we have to read the shastras? We are just being tossed in the ocean, isn't it? So we have to remember that there are two doers here so far, the instrumental cause and the initiating cause. If the tree is cut, yes, it is being cut by the weapon, the axe. But who has initiated that action? The woodcutter is the one who has initiated. He desired it in the first place. That's why now the axe in his
Mummy.
hand is cutting down the tree. So
लसन
that
देखो शायद इसमें होगा
is the instrumental cause. Okay, one second.
नहीं मैं इसको तुम थोड़ा डाल दो
Okay, so Prakriti is the instrumental cause and Jiva is the initiating cause. One who initiates the action, that person has to pay for the karma. He has to take the reaction because he was the one who desired it in the first place.
So for an enlightened soul, Jiva is okay. The soul is not the karta, means the soul is not the swatantra karta.
So when we say that the soul is not the doer, it means that he is not the only doer. He is not the karta, but that means that he is not the swatantra karta. He is not completely independent. He will not, it's not that I desire to get $10 million today, so I get it. No. Then again, the material nature will act. He will want to grant it to me if it is there in my karmic bank balance. So soul is not the doer. Soul is one of the three doers. It's not the swatantra karta. It's not completely independent. Yeah. What's your question, Krishna Kumar?
Yeah, so in this, like we are so the tree and the axe, and the cutting of the tree is concerned, I can say the tree is the soul. The soul is who is the soul? Who is the super soul is a jiva. The axe is the modes of material nature, and tree is the soul.
No, no. The jiva is the soul.
Okay, jiva is the soul.
Yes, the cutter, the one who's cutting the tree, the wood cutter, he is the soul. He initiates the action. He desires to cut the tree.
Okay.
And
Okay.
Prakriti is the instrument. Here, the super soul has not yet entered the picture here.
Okay.
Okay, super soul we'll see in the next verse. Okay.
नादत्ते कस्यचित् पापं न चैव सुकृतं विभुः अज्ञानेनावृतं ज्ञानं तेन मुह्यन्ति जन्तवः.
Nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge.
So see, in 5.14, he said that the soul is not the doer and everything is carried out by material nature. And he is not the proprietor. So if the soul is not the proprietor, next question is, then who is the proprietor? And why should I take the karmic reactions? The supreme proprietor, he should take the karma because the soul is not the doer. So now Krishna is answering that question. He's saying that the Supreme Lord does not assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. So he is not going to take anybody's sin or punya, papa or punya. He is not going to take. He does not interfere with it. So are we contradicting something that we have learned in the past? When we say that the Supreme Lord does not assume anyone's sinful or pious activities?
Yeah, according to our activities, what we deserve, so God will give that. But without assumption, without the calculating our sinful and pious activities?
Okay, but the Supreme Lord does not assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. So then what happened to all the sinful activities that Ajamila had conducted if the Lord does not take it away? What happened to all the sinful activities of Jagai and Madai? Did the Lord not take it away? Did he not wipe the slate clean?
Actually, God will do that. When we surrender to Krishna, what happens is, for example, when someone is going to meet an accident, if that person is having too much sinful reactions, if he is not surrendering to the Krishna, he is not purifying, there is the thing, he should die. But Krishna, instead of the big damage, because as we surrender to him, he give us only little which we can able to suffer.
Yes. So that happens only when we take to bhakti, isn't it? When we bring in bhakti yoga, when we bring in devotional service, then the Lord takes away our papa, and punya also he will take away, because punya also brings us back in the material world. It takes us to heaven, but we are in the material. So he takes away all our sinful and pious activities. But here, remember, in this section, Krishna is not talking about not talking on the level of bhakti yoga. He is talking about the karmis. Those who are doing activities, they get the karma. So who is the doer? Okay, so here he's talking on the karmi level. He is not yet talking about the bhakti yoga standards over here. So that's why here he's saying that the Supreme Lord does not assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. So as long as we are not on the level of bhakti, then the Supreme Lord is not responsible for any of our actions or reactions. Okay, but when we take to bhakti, when we bring in the Krishna factor in our lives, then everything can change. As I discussed, as I said in the previous class, when Krishna was born, or when he appeared, the right word is appeared. When Krishna appeared, all the planets and the stars, they realigned themselves. Okay, so when we bring Krishna in our life, that Krishna factor can change all our stars and all our planets and everything else. That's why Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, was a spiritual master of Srila Prabhupada. And he was an expert astrologer and also an astronomer. Yes, he used to teach. He was a professor also. But then he gave up everything. He was very expert at astrology and he gave it up. The reason why he gave it up is he said astrology can predict everything, but astrology cannot predict the Krishna factor, because Krishna can just change everything like that. So yes, when we bring Krishna in our life, then he can take away our sinful and pious activities. But as long as we do not surrender, here in this verse, he's not talking about the bhakti level. He's still talking about the karmi level. So he says that he does not interfere with anyone's sinful or pious activities. Therefore, he will not take our responsibility. Okay. So why does a person conduct certain kind of activity, sinful activity? Because he is in ignorance, and that ignorance has covered their real knowledge. So by nature, the spirit soul is completely pure and he's Satchit Ananda. So he has full knowledge. Satchit, chit means knowledge. So he is completely Satchit Ananda, the soul. But because now the soul is embodied, has a certain body, that real knowledge has now been covered by ignorance. And because the knowledge is covered by ignorance, they are bewildered. They are under the influence of Maya. Okay, and the Supreme Lord does not assume anyone's sinful or pious activities.
Okay, soul and the super soul, Anu Atma and Vibhu Atma, atomic and omniscient. Who is the Karta doer? If a criminal is jailed, the police, the instrumental cause, judge, the sanctioning cause, the criminal, the initiating cause. If a soul suffers, material nature, the instrumental cause, super soul, the sanctioning cause, and soul, the initiating cause.
So there are three parties who are involved. The three parties are what? The living entity, the soul, material nature, Prakriti, and Paramatma, or the super soul or the Supreme Lord. So the initiating cause is the living entity. Therefore, the living entity has to take the reaction, has to take the karma. The material nature, Prakriti, is only facilitating. He's just the facilitator, right? The instrumental cause. And of course, the sanctioner, one who allows everything to happen, the supreme controller is God, or the super soul. So the soul is called as the Anu Atma, or atomic, and super soul is called as a Vibhu Atma. This is in reply to the previous verse where we read that the living entity thinks that he's the Prabhu, he's the master of the body. But if he is the Prabhu of the body also, but the super soul is Vibhu Atma, omniscient. He is aware of all the bodies. The individual soul, he's atomic, Anu Atma. He is only aware of his own body. I know what is going on in my body right now. If I have an ache, something is paining me, I know. I'm not aware of what is going on in your body. Like that, you know what is going on in your body. So the soul is atomic. They know only their bodies, but the super soul knows all the bodies. So he is Vibhu Atma. So Why we have to take the karma, although we are one of the three doers, is because we are the initiators. We chose to act in a particular way. Let's read this.
How the living entity is in the tight grip of material nature is the doer can be compared to the attempt of a small boy to lift a weight he has just seen his father lift. The boy first desires to lift the weight and then tries. He cannot possibly succeed, but out of affection, his father sees his small son's desire, stands above him, and does the actual lifting. Thus, the father has actually lifted the weight, but he cannot be considered as the only lifter because unless the desire was expressed and then attempt made by the child, the father would have never helped and the weights would not have been lifted. Similarly, like the small child, the living entity should not become bewildered by false ego and pride and consider himself the doer of the activities, which he has no ability to perform. That does not mean, however, that the living entity can avoid the responsibility of having performed the activity because he both expressed the desire and made the attempt. When the living entity is ignorant of his eternal relationship with Krishna, he chooses his independent position, which in turn wells him to the material nature and places him under its control. Thus, he is responsible for his actions.
So
Very
we
good
are like the
explanation.
small child who tries to lift the weights, but there is no strength, right? There is no ability. So the father comes from behind and lifts the weight, and the child thinks that, oh, I lifted the weight. So actually, it's the Lord who is doing the things, right? And we think that we are the doers. I'm a self-made man. I have achieved this on my own strength. I cracked the exams because of my own intelligence. No, it's the Lord who has given us the ability. But of course, the father would have not lifted the weight from behind if the child didn't try to do it. So the whole action was initiated by the child originally. So therefore, we have to take the responsibility. Another example would be if somebody wants to smoke. Yes, he has a desire to smoke. So he goes and he purchases the cigarette in a shop. Now the living entity, he desired to smoke. Material nature has given the facility. The facility is there for him to go to the shop and buy those cigarettes. Now, that shop is able to sell the cigarette only because the government of the country has sanctioned the sale of cigarettes in the country. If the government does not sanction the sale of the cigarettes, neither the supermarket can sell it, nor that person can go and purchase it in the supermarket. So the ultimate sanctioner is the government, right? And the shop is providing the facility. So that is material nature. And the living entity is purchasing it. So he has initiated the action. If that living entity gets a disease, let's say now he has got cancer because he's a chain smoker, he cannot blame the supermarket saying that you sold the cigarettes to me, that's why I got this disease. Neither can he blame the government saying, why did you sanction the sale? Because you sanctioned the sale, I have got the disease. No, he has to take the responsibility for the disease because he chose to smoke. Okay, can we proceed?
ज्ञानेन तु तदज्ञानम् येषां नाशितमात्मनः तेषामादित्यवज्ञानम् प्रकाशयति तत्परम्.
When, however, one is enlightened with the knowledge by which nuisance is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything, as the sun lights up everything in the daytime.
So say previously in 15, what did Krishna say? That why a living entity is bewildered because his knowledge is covered by ignorance. So now in 16, he's talking about how to achieve the state of perfect knowledge. How, when one is enlightened with the knowledge by which nascence means ignorance, right? When one is enlightened by the knowledge by which nascence is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything. So when one gets the knowledge, then the person has come from darkness to light, from ignorance to knowledge. So he has achieved the state of perfect knowledge. Just as how the sun lights up everything in the daytime. The sun comes up and the darkness of the night is dispelled. So like that, when we get the knowledge, the darkness of ignorance is destroyed. Let's read this.
Two parts of perfect knowledge. First, to know oneself different from the body. Second, to know that one can never become God, and thus the soul is eternally different from the supersoul. Identity with individuality in the spiritual life is real knowledge. Reference Bhagavad Gita 2.1.
So what is this perfect knowledge? Perfect knowledge is we have to understand, know and understand that we are different from the body. We are the spirit souls. And other thing is, we can never become God. We can never become the controllers. We can never become equal to him. We are always going to be his servants, eternally his servants. And thus the soul is eternally different from the super soul. Many people think that once I become self-realized, then I can become equal to God. No. First of all, we are not the body, we are spirit soul. And this spirit soul, we can never become equal to God. We are eternally the servants of Krishna. Now, how to get real knowledge? Let's read this.
How to get real knowledge? Seek out a bona fide spiritual master and learn Krishna consciousness under him. A representative of God never claims that he is God, although he is paid all the respect ordinarily paid to God, because he has knowledge of God.
So see, Prabhupada explains that we have to get the real knowledge from a bona fide spiritual master and learn Krishna consciousness under him. Then Prabhupada says, a representative of God, a bona fide spiritual master will never say that he is God. He will always say that he is a servant of God. So this is very, very important. If somebody says that he is God, then he does not fall under this definition. Nobody can say that he is God other than actually God. Krishna said that he is God, and he proved that he is God by showing the universal form. But although the bona fide spiritual master never says that he is God, still he is treated as good as God. See, although he is paid all the respect ordinarily paid to God because he has knowledge of God. So the spiritual master never says that he is God, but we have to respect him as good as God. That's how we have to respect the spiritual master. So there are some differences between the soul and the super soul in this section. Let's read.
Comparing the soul and the super soul. 5.13 and 5.16. Super soul is eternal. Super soul is also eternal. Soul is blissful but suffers when covered by Maya. Super soul is always blissful and above the modes. Soul is cognizant of his body. Super soul is cognizant of all bodies. Soul is Anu, atomic. Super soul is Vibhu, omniscient. Soul has multiple independence to desire, but is dependent upon super soul to fulfill desires. The super soul has complete independence.
So the soul has minute independence. We have small little bit, like minute independence, but the super soul, Lord, he is completely independent. Nobody can tell the Lord, okay, now it's time for you to take an avatar. Like we read, no, in the previous chapter, how Krishna appears once in the day of Brahma, but nobody can tell Krishna, all right, it's time for you to go. So you have to go. The Lord does not have to do anything. He is completely independent. If he wants to come, he can come several times in one day of Brahma. And if he wants, he cannot come in even 100 years of Brahma. So he's completely independent. So now we go to the next section. In this entire section, Krishna talks about how one can attain liberation by focusing on the super soul.
Tadbuddhayastadaatmanas tannishthaastatparayanaha gacchantya punaravrittim jnana nirdhuta kalmashaha.
When one's intelligence, mind, faith, and refuse are all fixed in the Supreme, then one becomes fully cleansed of misgivings through complete knowledge and thus proceeds straight on the path of liberation.
So now that he has got the knowledge, he has come from darkness to light, then what happens? After getting knowledge, he fixes his mind, intelligence, faith, etc. in the Lord, and therefore he is now on the path of liberation. He's on the path of moksha.
Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavihastini Shuni Chaiva Shvapake Cha Pandita Samadarshinaha.
The humble sages, by virtue of true knowledge, see with equal vision a learned and a gentle Brahmana, a cow and an elephant, a dog and a dog-eater outcast.
So true knowledge also means that we have to have knowledge of the super soul. If we have to know the difference between the soul and the super soul, we have to know about the super soul. So Samadarshinaha means we see with equal vision. A person who is in knowledge sees with equal vision. What does he see? He sees a learned and a gentle Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater with the same equal vision. What does he see when he sees all these different categories of people and species? What he's seeing is that the super soul is residing in the body of the cow, of the Brahmin, of the elephant, of the dog, of the dog eater. That's how he sees everybody equally. The same super soul that is present in my heart, that same super soul is present in the body of the dog, the body of a dog eater, the body of a Brahmana, the body of a cow, the body of an elephant, the body of an ant also. So he respects all other living entities. Samadarshinaha. Let's read this.
Bhagavad Gita 5.18. The humble sages, by virtue of true knowledge, see with equal vision a learned and a gentle Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater, which is outcast. What is the basis of equal vision? Spiritual equality of living entities as super soul. Lord, neutrally present in the heart of all as Paramatma, and thus treats everyone as a friend, regardless of the circumstances of the living entities. Bodies are the material productions of different modes of material nature.
So he sees, first of all, he sees that everybody is spirit soul. It is because externally he may be in the body of an elephant, he may be in the body of a dog, or he may be in the body of a Brahmin, but internally everybody is spirit soul. And then he sees that the Paramatma, the super soul, is present inside the body of each of these living entities. And he sees that bodies are the material productions of different modes of material nature, which we have already discussed. How we get different kinds of bodies are the material productions of the different modes of material nature to suit different kinds of requirements. Different kinds of bodies are available. How many kinds of bodies are available? How many varieties of bodies are available to suit different desires?
84 lakhs.
84?
Millions.
Lakhs.
Yeah. Yes. So 8,400,000 or 84 lakh different kinds of bodies are available. Okay. So species and caste are two bases of mundane differentiation. He does not differentiate neither between the species nor between the castes. Samadarshina, he does not differentiate between the different species, neither does he differentiate between the different castes. He sees everybody, yes, everybody is a spirit soul, and the super soul is present in the heart of every living entity. But still, there is a difference. Still, there is a difference between the soul and the super soul. Let's read.
Similarity. Sorry. Okay. Similarity in the quality of the soul and super soul, however, does not make them equal in quantity. Individual soul is only present in that particular body. Paramatma is present in each and every body. Ocean of water versus glass of water. Similarly, mountain of gold versus small piece of gold. Qualitatively the same, but quantitatively different.
So just as how there is a lot of water in the ocean, and if somebody has to take one glass of that water and test it in the laboratory, it will have the same minerals and chemicals in the glass that there is in the ocean. Yes. So it's the same in quality. The ocean water is salty, and therefore the glass of water is also salty. It's not that that becomes sweet. So in quality, they are both the same. But in quantity, there is a vast difference between the water in the ocean and the water in the glass. Same way, mountain of gold and small piece of gold. If that mountain of gold is pure gold, 916 gold, then even that small piece of gold will be 916 gold. It has the same quality, the same purity. But in terms of quantity, there is a vast difference. So although we are Satchitananda, the soul is Satchitananda, and the Lord also is Satchitananda. So we are the same in quality, but we are very much different in quantity. We are very tiny compared to the Lord in terms of quantity. Qualitatively, we are the same. Quantitatively, we are different.
Ihaiva tairjitah sargo yesham samye sthitam manaha nirdosham hi samam brahma tasmad brahmani te sthitah.
Those whose minds are established in sameness and equanimity have already conquered the conditions of birth and death. They are flawless like Brahman, and thus they are already situated in the Brahman.
So equanimity of the mind is a sign of self-realization. Such a person, he is liberated in the body itself. So although he may be in the body, he is still in the material world because his mind is liberated. He is in a liberated state of mind. He is considered to be on the liberated platform. Although physically he may still be in the material world. So not everybody who walks this planet is conditioned. He can be on the liberated platform, although externally he may be around us. He may be walking amongst us, right? When Prabhupada used to go for morning walk, there were so many people who were going on a morning walk, but there is a difference. Prabhupada was on the liberated platform already, but the others may not necessarily have been on the liberated platform. So equanimity of the mind means one is already situated on the liberated platform. They are flawless like Brahman. So just as how the Lord is flawless, the Lord does not make a distinction between different species, we are all children of God, right? The Lord is not partial. So because of that, the Lord is flawless, and one who sees people with an equanimity as a Samadarshina, they are also flawless like God. So the essence of liberation is not transportation, but transformation. Just that, I mean, because we have not transported ourselves physically from the material to the spiritual realm, that doesn't mean that we are not liberated. We can be liberated if we have the transformation. If we have the right state of mind, then we are considered to be liberated. So essence of liberation is not transportation, but transformation.
Na prahrushyet priyam prapya no dvijet prapya cha priyam sthira buddhira sammudho brahma vibrahmani sthitah.
A person who neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant nor laments upon obtaining something unpleasant, who is self-intelligent, who is unbewildered, and who knows the signs of God is already situated in the transcendent.
So here Krishna is giving characteristics of a person who is a sthira buddhi. Sthira buddhi, one who is a self-realized soul. So what are the characteristics? What are the symptoms? He neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant, nor laments upon obtaining something unpleasant. Then he is self-realized. He is unbewildered. And he knows the science of God. So a person who is self-realized, he has these characteristics. When there is something pleasant, when something is going in his favor, he does not get too excited. And when something is not going in his favor, he does not lament. Why? Because he is not attached to the fruits of his labor. Because he is detached from the fruits, it does not matter from him whether the fruit is pleasant or it is unpleasant. Right? He is unbewildered. He is asamutta. He is not under the influence of Maya. He is fully aware of his situation as the servant of the Lord. And he knows the science of God. He understands the Shastra. Such a person is already situated in transcendence. He is already on the liberated platform.
बाह्यस्पर्शेष्वसक्तात्मा विन्दत्यात्मनि यत्सुखम् स ब्रह्मयोगयुक्तात्मा सुखमक्षयमश्नुते.
Such a liberated person is not attracted to material sense pleasure, but is always in trance, enjoying the pleasure within. In this way, the self-realized person enjoys unlimited happiness, for he concentrates on the Supreme.
So here Krishna is giving further symptoms of a self-realized person. He says, such a liberated person, he is not attracted to material sense pleasure and is always in trance, enjoying the pleasure within. So such a person who's on the liberated platform, he is not looking for pleasure outside. Oh, today I have to go, socializing, going out with friends, going out for parties, dinners. He is not attracted to this material sense pleasure, but he is enjoying the pleasure within. He is self-satisfied. Internally, he is happy. He does not have to go out and search for happiness outside. Yes, in this way, the self-realized person enjoys unlimited happiness, for he concentrates on the Supreme. What is the highest material pleasure the whole world is mad after? What do you think? What is the highest material pleasure?
Money.
Money. Okay.
Happiness.
Yeah, what? Happiness and what? What is it that people are looking for maximum, mostly? Highest material pleasure.
Mental peace.
Power.
Power. Okay. What did you say, Krishna Kumar?
I said mental peace.
Mental peace. No, on the material sense, on the material platform.
On the material.
To be successful.
Successful.
So
Beautiful family.
Family. Highest
I
material
said
sense
wealth,
pleasure.
health
That
and
which gives
happiness.
the highest material sense pleasure.
Wealth, health, and happiness.
Okay, I think that all of you are very, very advanced people. So you are not able to think on the material platform. But the highest pleasure, highest material pleasure is what one experiences when a man and woman unite. Okay, that is the highest material pleasure considered to be. So there is a great Vaishnava saint called Sri Yamunacharya, and this is what he said. Let's read.
A practical example is given by Sri Yamunacharya, a great saint and devotee, who says, since my mind has been engaged in the service of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, and I have been enjoying an ever new transcendental humor, whenever I think of sex life with a woman, my face at once stains from it, and I spit at the thought.
So see, when a person is in the liberated state, then this material sense pleasure is, he's not attracted to material sense pleasure. He does not gain pleasure from these things, which otherwise give a lot of pleasure to a person who is on a material platform. So Yamunacharya, he said that when he thinks of sex life with a woman, then immediately he spits at the thought. So when one is on a liberated platform, then these material sense pleasures, they seem so abominable. He does not get any pleasure from that. Do any of you know about Sri Yamunacharya? Have you heard about him? Especially South India? He is very famous in South India. You know Ramanujacharya?
I know him, ma'am, Ramanujacharya.
Yes. So Sri Yamunacharya was the spiritual master of Ramanujacharya. There is a very famous temple in Tamil Nadu, the Ranganath temple.
Srirangapatnam.
Yes, so they used to stay and they would take care of the temple and all that. Yamunacharya and Ramanujacharya. Okay. Okay, let's read this.
The extraordinary birth of Drona. The name Drona is indicative of his extraordinary birth. He was not born in an ordinary way. The most people, when they are born, they have to go into the mother's womb and suffer in the mother's womb, and then the soul gets a body. But Drona is born from a great sage and also is born in an extraordinary way. His father was Bharadwaj. Once Bharadwaj, along with several other sages, had gone to the Ganges. While they were bathing, Bharadwaj was bathing at a distance from the other sages, and there he saw a celestial damsel or an apsara named Gritachi. She was so attractive, looking at his retrospective seed emerged, and for a great sage, the reproductive energy itself is very powerful, and he has no desire to give up his renounced order. It is just a slip that happened. But even in such a slip, because he had for a long time practiced austerity and conserved his energy, when that seed came out, that seed itself had extraordinary power. He collected it in a drona and kept it. Drona is a container made of natural elements like leaves and other things. Often small helpings of food are served in drona. From that drona, soon Dronacharya appeared.
So see the extraordinary birth of Dronacharya. Dronacharya did not have to suffer in the womb of his mother for 9 months. Right? The child in the womb of the mother goes through a lot of suffering because it's in a small, cramped up place, it's in a dark place. Then when the mother eats something very spicy, very pungent, then the skin of the child in the womb burns very badly, and the child is urinating there, passing stool there, and it is in the same it is in its own urine and stool covered. So the child in the womb goes through a lot of suffering, but Dronacharya did not have to go through that suffering in the womb of a mother. So this is an extraordinary birth of Dronacharya, and that's because the vital fluid of his father, he collected and kept it in a drona. That's why his name was Dronacharya. Drona, as we see, it means a small container. So sometimes we have these small containers which are made of leaves, and they call it drone or they call it don in Hindi. Right? That's how he was born, from that drona, and that's why his name was Dronacharya. Now, why are we talking about this here? The reason why we are connecting this story here is because here in 21 Krishna said that a person who's on the liberated platform is not attracted to material sense pleasure. And then we saw how Yamunacharya says that when he thinks about a union with a woman, then he feels like spitting at the throat, right? So in the previous ages, when a man and woman unite, it would be for so that they can have glorious children. The reason why the union would take place was so that they can have glorious children. It was not to engage in sense pleasure. They were so advanced that they were not concerned about sensual pleasure. They would unite only for the sake of having children, and they would not waste their vital fluid just for some temporary pleasure. They were that self-realized platform. Therefore, when the father of Drona, when he saw this Apsara, when he saw this beautiful damsel, he lost some of his vital fluid from the body, and he did not want to waste that also, right? Even that he did not want to waste, so he collected it in a Drona, in a small container made of leaves, and from that Dronacharya was. So the aim or the goal of union between man and woman in the previous ages was only to have glorious children. They would not unite for sensual pleasure. They would not waste their vital fluid for sensual pleasure. According to Ayurveda, it takes 80 drops of blood to make 1 drop of semen. So that much of energy. That's why after the act, one feels loss of energy, right? It takes 80 drops of blood to make 1 drop of semen. And again, another story of a person who was self-realized and he did not take pleasure from material sense pleasures was Haridas Thakur. In fact, Maya Devi herself, imagine Maya Devi herself approached Haridas Thakur for uniting with him, but he did not take pleasure in that, and instead he made her his disciple. So this is another incident from the life of Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur was actually arrested by the Muslim ruler, and he told him that if you don't stop chanting Hare Krishna, then we will kill you. And then Haridas Thakur said, even if you cut my body into pieces and I have to give up my life, I will never stop chanting Lord Hari's holy name. So a self-realized person gets so much pleasure from chanting the holy name, so much pleasure. He is so self-satisfied internally that he is ready to even give up his life. That he is not willing to stop devotional service. Stop chanting. Okay, let's go to 22.
ये हि संस्पर्शजा भोगा दुःखयोनय एव ते आद्यन्तवन्तः कौन्तेय न तेषु रमते बुधः.
An intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery, which are due to contact with the material senses. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in them.
So why an intelligent person does not take pleasure in the material sense pleasures? Because they are sources of misery. Why they are sources of misery? Because they have a beginning and they have an end. One may enjoy very much with a member of the opposite sex, but that pleasure has a beginning and has an end, and it will ultimately bring misery. So a person, an intelligent person, does not partake in that. He partakes in that which will give him happiness forever, which will give him pleasure forever. Eternally, he will be able to enjoy. So a person in Krishna consciousness can stay high forever. Eternally, he can stay high. Because otherwise, if he's going to take drugs, when somebody takes drugs, then they feel high. But then next morning, again, what? They wake up with a heavy head, right? And they are going through the after effects of having taken heavy drugs the previous night. So then it's bringing misery. So an intelligent person does those activities which will give him pleasure eternally. It will help him stay high forever. Let's read this.
An intelligent person does not take part in sensual pleasures because contact of senses with the sense objects is a source of misery. Such pleasures have a beginning and an end. They are temporary. Be restrained to avoid being strained. See the pleasure that ends in trouble as trouble, not pleasure. Why long for a pleasure that never stays for long?
So these are the things that we have to ponder on, meditate upon. Be restrained to avoid being strained. See the pleasure that ends in trouble as trouble. Don't see that as pleasure. And why should we long for a pleasure that never stays for long?
Seek more than sense pleasure, not more sense pleasures. Sensual pleasures ends, but it doesn't end with pleasure.
Okay. 23.
शक्नोति हैव यः सोढुम् प्राक्शरीरविमोक्षणात् कामक्रोधोद्भवं वेगं स युक्तः स सुखी नरः.
Before giving up this present body, if one is able to tolerate the urges of material senses and check the force of desire and anger, he is well situated and is happy in this world.
So what is the result of doing the activities that Krishna has mentioned in the previous verse? The result of that is that person is well situated and he is happy in this world. So already he although he may be present in the material world, still he can be happy. So for how long do we have to tolerate the urges of the material senses? If somebody asks, okay, you are asking me to tolerate the urges of the material senses, for how long do we have to tolerate? Krishna answers it in this verse.
Till we are there in this present body.
Till we are in the present body, which means right up till the point of death, till we die, before giving up the present body. So till we die, we have to tolerate the urges of the material senses. It's not that one day we get up and we say, okay, now no more I have to tolerate. No, because Maya, she never gives up. Maya does her job to perfection. She does her service to perfection. So as long as we are alive, she is going to try and try and try and try to tempt us to take us away from Krishna. So we have to tolerate till death. Maya never gives up. So Prabhupada explains that there are 6 urges that we have to tolerate. The force of speech, force of anger, mind, tongue, stomach, and genitals. So these are the 6 forces that we have to tolerate, 6 urges every living entity must tolerate. And one who can tolerate these urges, he is called as a Goswami. Swami. Swami means master, go means senses. So he is the master, he has controlled his senses, therefore he is called as the Goswami. These are the 6 urges. So this we have already answered. How long we have to tolerate? Till death. Does Maya give up? She never gives up. So this we have already seen. So surrender to Krishna is difficult, but surrender to the body is doomed. So we have to, it may be difficult, but it's not impossible to surrender to Krishna. But surrendering to body is doomed because that is impossible situation, right? So we have to make the choice. Are we going to surrender to Maya, to body, or are we going to surrender to Krishna? One is difficult, one is impossible. So choose the difficult because anyway, the other option is impossible. Temptations will come. We don't have to welcome. So Maya will send us temptations. Just because that something is being offered to us, it does not mean that we have to welcome them. We can always say no. Even if we can't stop feeling sensual urges, we can stop feeding sensual urges. So we may feel something, but that doesn't mean that we have to indulge in everything that we feel. We have to stop feeding these urges. We can't always control how we feel, but we can control how we act. Our greatest power is not the power we have over others, but the power we have over ourselves. So sometimes people think that, okay, I have this power. I have so many people working under me, right? Or I'm ruling the country. I can do what I like to do with all these people. I can control them, but no. Our greatest power is the power we have over ourselves. That is the greatest power. How much we are able to tolerate the urges of the senses. In the spiritual race, if we strive to be finishers, we will be winners also. So we're all running a race, yes. And normal on the material platform, in any running race, only one person is declared the winner. One who reaches the finishing line first is declared the winner. But in the race in which we are in the spiritual race, anybody who reaches the finishing line is a winner. We just have to reach the finishing line. So that should be our goal, to reach the finishing line. That's all. Then we are the winners. The biggest battle in life is to keep the biggest battle the biggest battle. So as we go about with our material duties, we should not forget what is the goal of life. That is the biggest challenge, that to always keep that number one in our priority list. Not that we get distracted by money and wealth and power and other things, and then the goal of life takes a backseat. Then that has come down the list. No, to keep it on the top, that is our biggest challenge. Let's go to 24.
Yonta sukantara Ramaha तथान्तर्ज्योतिरेव यः स योगी ब्रह्मनिर्वाणम् ब्रह्मभूतोऽधिगच्छति.
One whose happiness is within, who is active and rejoices within, and whose aim is inward is actually the perfect mystic. He is liberated in the Supreme, and ultimately he attains the Supreme.
So see here, Krishna is talking about the Brahma Bhuta stage. Brahma Bhuta, he is experiencing the pleasure of spiritual realization. He is satisfied from within. So that is called as a Brahma Bhuta stage. So one whose happiness is within, who is active and rejoices within, whose aim is inward and is actually the perfect. So this is all, remember, this whole section is talking about meditation on the super soul. So his aim is inward. He is actually the perfect mystic. He is liberated in the Supreme, and ultimately he attains the Supreme. So this is called as a Brahma Bhuta stage, where he experiences happiness within. Nothing external will give him happiness. So there is a contrast between material enjoyment and spiritual fulfillment. Materialism materialism centers on gaining. Spirituality centers on regaining. Spirituality means we want to regain what we have forgotten, what we have lost. We want to revive our lost relationship with Krishna. That is spirituality. Materialism centers only on gaining. I want more money, more wealth, more this, more that. That is material pleasure. But spiritual fulfillment is when we regain our lost relationship with Krishna. So with this regard, there is a story between Sanatan Goswami. There is a story of Sanatan Goswami and the touchstone, but we will see the story at the end of the class. We will hear an audio. Let's go to 25.
लभन्ते ब्रह्मनिर्वाणम् ऋषयः क्षीणकल्मषाः छिन्नद्वैधायतात्मानः सर्वभूतहिते रताः.
Those who are beyond the dualities that arise from the doubts, whose minds are engaged within, who are always busy working for the welfare of all living beings, and who are free from all sins, achieve liberation in the Supreme.
So here Krishna is describing more symptoms of one who is seeking satisfaction from the spirit, not material. So what are they? He is beyond dualities. The mind is engaged within. They are always busy working for the welfare of all beings and who are free from all sins. So 4 characteristics. Okay, so the same thing is explained here. All right, so here we have to see that Krishna is talking about being free from all sins, and he's talking about welfare of all living beings. What is the highest welfare work? What is the highest welfare work?
To give free food or knowledge.
Free food? What kind of food?
Or free knowledge.
What kind of knowledge?
Prasad and spiritual knowledge.
Okay, so that is the highest welfare work. Anything else?
Krishna
Anybody
consciousness
else?
knowledge. No?
Krishna consciousness knowledge. Okay. Anything else?
To serve the Lord.
To serve the Lord is the highest welfare work. Serve the Lord by serving.
Or loving the Lord.
Loving the Lord is the highest welfare work. Anything else?
Serve to a spiritual master.
Serve the spiritual master. Okay. Anything
That
else you
can
want to
be-
add?
That's all.
Helping someone to regain their original connection with the Lord.
So with that line, we cover everything else. When we help someone to regain their connection with the Lord, that can be through prasad, that can be by giving Krishna conscious knowledge or giving transcendental knowledge. So all these things, ultimately in one line, if we want to summarize, when we help somebody else to revive their lost connection with the Lord, then that is the highest welfare work. Or in other words, when we preach Krishna consciousness, then that is the highest welfare work.
But condition is that it should be by the authentic person.
Yes.
Bona fide
So
spiritual master.
yeah, bona fide person. So now you are listening to this knowledge. You are listening this knowledge from somebody who is in a bona fide parampara, right? You are not listening from somebody who's bogus. So if you want to give this knowledge ahead, you have to simply repeat what you have heard from somebody else in a bona fide parampara. Okay.
Mhm.
So you just have to repeat what you have heard, not put your own words, not add or subtract anything. Suppose you're teaching something to somebody else which you have heard in a class, and a question is asked. You don't know the answer to the question. Then you tell the person, I'm sorry, I do not know the answer. I will get the answer next class. And then you go back and ask somebody in a bona fide disciplic succession, what is the correct answer? So like that, you can preach. You don't have to be
Okay.
a Sanskrit expert. You don't have to invent some new method of teaching. You simply repeat what you have heard in disciplic succession. That's all.
Okay.
So the highest welfare work to revive the forgetfulness of Krishna, being the supreme enjoyer, proprietor, and well-wisher. That is the highest welfare work. What is the imperfect understanding of welfare activities? Now, most people think welfare activities are what? What is the general conception people have?
Giving food, money, charity, all those materialistic, whatever the things.
Yes, exactly. When we do something for somebody's physical or welfare or temporary relief of external body and mind. So we may feed a poor person some food, we may sponsor a child's education in school, or we take care of old people in old age home, orphanages, or open a hospital for free treatment. These are all giving relief to people, yes, but only on the bodily platform. Only on the bodily platform, because that orphan, that old person, or that sick person in the hospital, once death strikes, again he's going to be in the cycle of birth and death. So that is not the highest welfare activity. That is just temporary relief. Why is it imperfect? Because the real cause of one's difficulties is the forgetfulness of one's relationship with the Supreme Lord. When we help the person get over that forgetfulness, revive that lost condition, then that is highest welfare work. But when we do something on the bodily platform for somebody's welfare, then it is not going to revive his lost relationship with the Lord. Now in this verse, you see Krishna has spoken about one being free from all sins, and he's talking about welfare. So when somebody wants to engage in that real welfare, it's also important that they are free from all sins, because see, the more we are responsible for others, the more we need to be responsible for ourselves. So if one person is free from sins, or at least trying to be free from sins, then his preaching to somebody else will be more effective, because purity is the force. Let's say you are learning Bhagavad Gita from someone. You're going every day, every week, you're going to a class, to this house, and every day you're learning Bhagavad Gita. But then you go for the class on Saturday, and on Sunday you see the person in a discotheque smoking a cigarette. Will you feel very inspired to go and learn the Gita again on Saturday from that person?
No, not at all.
No, because the purity of the person, because you have seen, so it's the purity that will encourage somebody else also to go and learn from that person. Yes. So the more we are responsible for others, the more we need to be responsible for ourselves. So when somebody is teaching, then if that person is also on a pure platform, then it will have a better impact on the other person. So just as how now we know in the COVID times, when the doctor goes for treatment is treating other COVID patients, he has to be even more responsible for his own health. He has to be vaccinated. He should take all precautions so that he does not get infected. Because if he is infected by the virus, then all the patients that he's treating, he's putting them under danger. Right? So the doctor has to be more responsible about his own health when he's taking the responsibility of the others. It's the same thing.
It is like you preach what you practice.
right?
Yes, yes,
Saying
yes,
is better than doing.
yes, correct. So are we like doctors who give medicines to everyone except themselves? So sometimes let's say let's say somebody is having a disease and he has gone to the doctor, he has taken some medicines, and by taking that medicines, he is cured. Or let's say, no, I'm sorry, he's not cured yet, but he's taking the medicines and he's in the process of getting cured. And then he comes across somebody else who's going through the same difficult condition. And he says, you know what, I have taken this medicine. You should also take this medicine. And it will help you in this disease state. Now, like that, he gives the same advice to other people to take the medicine. But in his enthusiasm to tell other people to take this treatment, if he himself forgets to take the medicine, then is he a very wise person? So we should not be like the doctors who give medicine to everyone except themselves. He also has to take the medicine himself.
कामक्रोधविमुक्तानां यतीनां यतचेतसाम् अभितो ब्रह्मनिर्वाणं वर्तते विदितात्मनाम्.
Those who are free from anger and all material desires, who are self-realized, self-disciplined, and constantly endeavoring for perfection, are assured of liberation in the supreme in the very near future.
So who can attain liberation in the near future? Very soon. What does Krishna say? When one is free from anger and all material desires, when he is kama krodha vimuktanam, when he is free from anger and all material desires, when he is self-realized, self-disciplined, and he is constantly endeavoring for perfection, they are assured of liberation in the very near future, very quickly, at the end of this lifetime itself. No more lifetimes. So Prabhupada explains this with an analogy. So basically, okay, let's read before we comment.
Focus on learning. Purport 5.26. Krishna conscious person is the best of all salvations because effective control of senses is done by focusing on lotus feet of Lord, which uproots all the deep grown desires of fruitive acts. Analogy of meditation, tortoise, fish, bird. The tortoise brings up its offspring simply by meditation. Eggs of the tortoise are laid on land, and the tortoise meditates on the eggs while in the water. The fish brings up his offspring simply by looking at them. Birds maintain their offspring by touching. Similarly, the devotee of Krishna consciousness, although far away from the Lord's abode, can elevate himself to that abode simply by thinking of him constantly, by engagement in Krishna consciousness. Brahma Nirvana, stage of essence of material miseries due to being constantly immersed in the Supreme.
So here Krishna is saying that when one is constantly thinking of the Lord or meditating on the super soul, this entire section is on the super soul. So just by meditating on him constantly on the super soul, even though he's far away from the Lord's abode, that can elevate him, that can take him back to the spiritual world very, very quickly. And then Prabhupada gives the analogy of the tortoise, the fish, and the birds. Actually, he's quoting from other Shastra about how a tortoise lays the eggs and then goes away in the water. And in the course of time, the eggs hatch. So the tortoise is thinking, meditating on the eggs, but they're not physically, he's not physically there. The fish also brings up his offspring simply by looking at them. The birds maintain their offspring by touching. So like that, in the same way, the devotee in Krishna consciousness, although he is far away from the spiritual realm, he's far away from the abode of the Lord, he can elevate himself by meditating on the super soul. So this is called as the Brahma Nirvana stage, where the material desires or material miseries are completely absent. Although he is in the material world, which is a place of miseries, those miseries are absent because he is immersed in the Supreme. Now, that doesn't mean that a devotee does not go through miseries. He does not have any kind of suffering. Yes, as long as he is in the material world, he has to go through suffering, but he does not become miserable. Even though he may go through some problems in his life, some challenges, he does not become miserable because he is immersed in the meditation of the Supreme. He is internally always happy. So here we have a summary of this section. Let's read.
Summarized theme, characteristics of an enlightened, liberated karma yogi, 5.17 to 5.20. Vision of self-realized soul, 5.18 to 5.20. Equal vision to all living entities, irrespective of species and caste. No attraction, aversion to matter. Thus, he is flawless and impartial like the Lord. No rejoicing, lamenting for material events. 5.20. Intelligence fixed in self, and one knows the signs of God. 5.20. Knows perfectly above 3 levels of absolute truth and constitutional position of living entity. This is Brahman, realization or self-realization. Never attracted to sense gratification because he understands that contact of sense object is a source of misery and continual material existence, and that sense pleasures is temporary and limited. He experiences great happiness within, higher taste. 5.20. Summarized thing. Continue. Internal and external behavior activities of a self-realized soul. 5.23 to 26. Tolerates the forces of desire and anger, urges of senses till death. 5.20. How he tolerates? By focusing his happiness, activities, and goals inward, higher taste. 5.24. Purifying his external activities by working for the benefit of others. 5.25. Fixed meditation on super soul. 5.26. Soon attains liberation in near future.
Okay, so now we come to section 5. We have 3 verses. Let's finish.
Sparshan kritva bahirbahyam chakshuschaivantare bhuvoh pranapanau samau kritva nasabhyantaracharinav yatendriyamano buddhir munirmokshaparayanaha vigatechha bhayakrodho yah sada mukta eva saha.
Shutting out all external sense objects, keeping the eyes and vision concentrated between the 2 eyebrows, suspending the inward and outward breaths within the nostrils, and thus controlling the mind, senses, and intelligence, the transcendentalist aiming at liberation becomes free from desire, fear, and anger. One who is always in this state is certainly liberated.
So here, actually, this verse is a preview of the next chapter, chapter number 6. Krishna is going to go into great detail of Dhyana Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga, the 8-fold process. So he's saying that all that he has described so long, that state of mind can also be attained by engaging in Ashtanga Yoga or Dhyana Yoga. So we'll see the details of how to do this yoga system in chapter number 6. So this is connecting us to chapter number 6. So the last verse of this chapter, let's see.
Bhoktaram yagyatapasam sarvalokamaheeshwaram sahridam sarvabhutanam yatva mam shantimricchati.
A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the Supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries.
So here Krishna is giving us the greatest peace formula. Okay, how we can remain peaceful in all places, including Arjuna on the battlefield, how he can be peaceful even on the battlefield. So what is a peace formula? First of all, Bhoktaram Yagya Tapasam. He knows that Krishna is the ultimate beneficiary of all the yagyas, all the sacrifices, all the austerities. He is the ultimate beneficiary. Then Sarva Loka Maheshwaram, to know that the Lord is Sarva Loka, or he is the master of all the planetary systems and all the demigods, Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. Then to know that Krishna is Suhridam. Suhridam, he is the ultimate well-wisher, benefactor. Yes, so there are different kinds of friends. Some may be social friends, some may be officially friends for business, right? In the business world, okay, somebody is my friend. But Krishna is that kind of friend. He's Suhridam. He's that kind of friend. He's the genuine benefactor and well-wisher of whom Sarva Bhutanam, of all the living entities. How he is the ultimate benefactor of all the living entities? Because he accompanies us as the super soul. Life after life after life after life after life. We pass through so many millions and millions of different kinds of bodies, but the super soul Krishna, he never leaves our side. He leaves us only when we go back to the spiritual realm. So like that, he is our benefactor, well-wisher. He is the Suhridam. And Gyatva Mam Shantim Rachim, one who knows all these things, Gyatva, thus knowing him as the Bhoktaram Yagya Tapasanam, knowing him as the Sarva Loka Maheshwaram, knowing him as a Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam, then Shantim Rachati. Such a person can get Shanti, relief from material pangs. So such a person can be peaceful. So this is the ultimate peace formula that Krishna is giving us in 5.29. So let's
How is
read
how is denominating with the Maheshwara, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram? Maheshwaram is basically, we use this word for the Shiva, Lord Shiva, no?
Yes, Maheshwaram is the one of the name of Lord Shiva, but here it is Maha Ishwaram, Supreme Lord of Sarva Loka. They are not saying
Okay,
that
Maheshwaram.
Maheshwaram is a name of Krishna. He is Sarva Loka. So this is not a name. This is like a status. Okay.
Mhm.
Let's read the verse by verse summary.
Okay. Chapter 5. Karma Yoga, action in Krishna consciousness. Verse by verse summary. Verse 1. In the third chapter, Krishna explained that a person in knowledge is absolved of the need to perform prescribed duties. And in the fourth chapter, he told Arjuna that all sacrificial work culminates in knowledge. At the end of fourth chapter, however, Krishna advised Arjuna to fight. Now Arjuna, perplexed by Krishna, stressing the importance of both work in devotion and of inaction in knowledge, asked Krishna to state definitely which of the two paths is more beneficial. Verse 2. He is confused because to him work and renunciation appear incompatible. To clear up Arjuna's confusion, Krishna explains in the fifth chapter that devotional work is full knowledge. Devotional work in full knowledge has no material reaction and is therefore the same as renunciation of work. Of the two, however, devotional work is better. Krishna then describes the characteristics of one who works in such an unattached manner, sacrificing the fruits of work to him. 3.17. Such a devotional worker, purified by transcendental knowledge, realizes that he is a spiritual entity. Since he is transcendental to his body, mind, and senses, he does not identify with their actions, performing actions, yet renouncing the fruits unto the Supreme Lord. He is not affected by sinful action as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. Verses 3 to 17. Krishna then describes the characteristics of one who works in such an unattached manner, sacrificing the fruits of work to him. Such a devotional worker, purified by transcendental knowledge, realizes that he is a spiritual entity. Since he is transcendental to his body, mind, and senses, he does not identify with their actions, performing actions, yet renouncing the fruits unto the Supreme Lord. He is not affected by sinful action, as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. 10. Verses 18 to 28. Thus he attains peace. Such an unattached actor becomes situated in transcendence or Brahma Nirvana. Such a Pandita or wise person is fixed in perfect knowledge of the self and the Supreme. He sees all beings with equal vision, and he is cognizant of their spiritual nature beyond the external material body. He works for their ultimate spiritual welfare and is unattached to the dualities of pleasure and pain. He is not attracted to material sense pleasure, but enjoys the pleasure within, concentrating on the Supreme. Verse 29. In conclusion, Krishna states that one who knows him as the ultimate goal of all sacrifices and austerities, as the Supreme Lord of all the worlds, and as the best friend of all living beings, attains relief from material suffering.
So with this, by the mercy of Guru and Krishna, we come to the end of chapter number 5. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Okay, so what do we have to discuss?
You said one story, no?
Ah, yes, one story. Okay.
I love all the stories.
Okay, let's hear.
He was an example. To the extreme degree, people are so worried of losing something today of this world. Losing a family member, losing some money, losing their house, losing their car. Sanatana Goswami left his house, left his clothes, left all of his palanquins, left his family, even shaved his head. Lived under a different tree every night, putting on the rags that people will discard. But he was experiencing the ultimate ecstasy. And even great kings were coming before him, begging, please give me your wealth. One devotee of Lord Shiva, he worshipped Lord Shiva with great, great attention. Ashutosh appeared before him. He said, what do you want? He said, I desire to have what I have read about in the scriptures. I want touchstone. Anything I touch with it will turn to pure gold. If you have money, you have power, you have fame. You can get practically anything you want in this world with money, except peace of mind. But this person, he went to Lord Shiva. But Lord Shiva is Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhu. He is the greatest devotee. He's really compassionate. He wanted to really help this person. So he told him that you go to Vrindavan, the holy land of Shri Shri Radha Shyam Sundar. There, living on a hill called the Dwadas Aditya Til, is a great, great saintly person named Sanatana Goswami. He has a touchstone. If you ask him and tell him I sent you because we're good friends, he will give you that touchstone. He went to Vrindavan, very eager, not for Krishna, but for touchstone. He approached Sanatana Goswami. Swamiji, Lord Shiva sent me. I performed such tapasya that he appeared before me. I asked him for touchstone. He told me that you will definitely give me your touchstone. Sanatana Goswami said, you want it? You can have it. Yes, I want it. Take it. Where is it? It's over there. Where? Over there. In the garbage? Yes, it's in the garbage. Look through it, you'll find it somewhere in there. He looked through the garbage heap, and there was the touchstone. He tried it. When he touched something with a wish in his heart, it turned to gold. Someone asked me, why wasn't the garbage gold? The reason is because Sanatana Goswami never wished gold. It fulfills your wish. To Sanatana Goswami, it was just another piece of garbage. One man's food is another man's poison. To us, stool is garbage. But to a hog, stool is a sumptuous feast. So he tried, and everything he touched was turning to gold. So he was going around touching so many things, and he was becoming a very wealthy man. But he was finding no satisfaction in his heart. No matter how much wealth he accumulated, there was no peace. There was always anxiety. Anxiety to get more and to protect what you have. So he was thinking, if he kept this in the garbage, he must have something more valuable than this. So this Brahmin returned to Sanatana Goswami and said, Swamiji, I think you must have something more valuable than this touchstone. Otherwise, why would you keep it laying in the garbage? Sanatana Goswami said, yes, I have something unlimitedly more auspicious than this touchstone. Well, I'm not satisfied with the touchstone, so please give me this. I will give you, but first you throw the touchstone in Jamuna. He threw it in Jamuna. He approached Sanatan Goswami with folded palms. Sanatan Goswami explained to him, I am going to give you a touchstone that will turn your heart into gold. It will awaken within your heart the understanding of the supreme most treasure, the treasure of love for Krishna. The touchstone is the holy name. You repeat after me. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram. They asked our Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, what do you expect to get after a whole life of chanting Hare Krishna? Prabhupada's response was, an eternal life of chanting Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Ram. Now we are chanting and dancing to purify this heart. And what happens when the heart is pure? In this life and beyond this, the soul, when it is transported to the spiritual abode of the Lord, we will eternally, in unlimited love and bliss, dance with our arms raised, celebrating the beautiful qualities of Krishna by chanting his holy name. So one may ask, does that mean I have to become like Sanatan Goswami and give up everything, wear rags and sleep under trees? If you try to do that, most likely you will die. He was showing the example of one in the renounced order of life, but he taught by his words the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yare deka thare kaha Krishna upadesha maragoi guru ho thare desh. Whether you are grihastha living in home, brahmachari living in ashram, sannyasi roaming around place to place, or even living in the forest, if we simply center our life on the principle of service to Krishna and purify our hearts through hearing his glories and chanting his names in the association of his devotees, we will achieve the same result. Many great devotees were kings, businessmen, politicians, householders, farmers, banana leaf sellers. So many people of different occupational persuasions. They all manifested that same perfection of pure love of God by performing their work honestly in a spirit of devotion, not greed. And that comes through the purification of hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord.
You were listening to Radhanath Swami on thesacredconnect.com.
Okay, so that's the story of Sanatan Goswami and the touchstone. Any questions? Was the story clear? I will share it in the group so that you can hear it again if you like. What else do we have to discuss?
So we'll get the question paper of chapter 5 also, Mataji?
Yes, it's already ready and I will put it today.
Okay.
So chapter 5 was relatively shorter, so we finished it in 2 sessions. Then we finished chapter 6, and when we finish chapter 6, then we finish 1/3 of the Gita. Remember, when we did the introduction, we said the Gita is divided into 3 sections: the first 6, the middle 6, and the last 6. So middle 6 is where the pure honey is. So very soon we are going to start with the middle section of the Gita when we come to chapter number 7. But before that, we have to do chapter 6.
I think Mataji, middle 6 we got who is God, like that, no? Chapter who is God.
Yeah, it's pure Bhakti Yoga. Middle 6 chapter is pure Bhakti Yoga. So lot of nectar. And I'm looking forward to that section actually.
Yes. I heard the 7th chapter. I think it's very, very, very nice, Mataji.
Yes. Okay. So there is a mistake in the question paper. Did you all read the message in the group? The last question in section 1, the verse of the analogy verse is in the previous verse, not in that verse. So you can go to the group and read it. Okay, and if you have already submitted the question paper, I will go through them again, but I think most of you got the answer. I think all of you, not most, all of you who have submitted have got the answer right. But anyway, I will go through it and make the correction if necessary. What else do we have to discuss? All right then, it's late in India also. I want you all to take rest. Thank you
Hare
all very
Krishna,
much.
Hare Krishna.
See you all next week. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.